Welcome to RAIN, the Real Estate Investor Growth Network with your hostess, Jen Josie. Join like-minded real estate investors and accelerate your business towards greatness. You will hear step-by-step strategies for success, interviews with real estate rock stars, and we will dig deep into past projects where we bear it all, including the good, the bad, and some just plain ugly. So get excited. Here's the bestower of badassery herself, the real Jen Josie. Listener discretion is advised.
Hi, and welcome back. I'm Jen Josie, creator of RAIN, the Real Estate Investor Growth Network. Whoop, whoop. On today's episode, we have a guest that will be sharing one of their past projects. We will let you decide if it was good or bad or just plain ugly. But before we begin, here's today's badassery bestowment, my little badass gift to you. Today's topic is standalone bathtubs. If you are designing a master bath, you can never go wrong with a standalone tub. Some people will never use it, but still love the look of one. This was actually the deciding factor on a home we recently sold. A couple was walking through the house liking this and that, but once they set eyes on that big soaking tub, they were sold. You've got to paint the picture for your buyers by helping them envision the tub as a relaxing sanctuary in their home. If you are limited on space and you need a shorter tub, try to get one that has the drain on one side. I'm not sure who designed the ones with the drain in the center, but it hurts my rump just thinking about it. For the longer tubs, the center drain is fine. I'm guessing it makes it more comfortable for, if you have a bubble bath buddy or something. The standalone tub faucets that are floor mounted, boy, those buggers can get expensive. What we've done on our last few flips is build out a little quarter wall, a few inches taller than the tub, and run the water line through it. That allows us to use a much more affordable wall faucet, and the small quarter wall serves as a ledge for bath soaps or candles. My last little nugget is to position the water faucet to one end instead of the center. This allows the person to get in while it's filling and not have the warmest water hit them on the stomach as they are trying to relax. So, when designing your next master bath remodel, a standalone bathtub will help you soak up larger returns. Now, on to today's episode of the Real Estate Investor Growth Network podcast. We have with us a celebrity, Jenna Hoover. Jenna has been a real estate speaker and mentor since 2013. She's a residential redeveloper with historic preservation as her favorite. She's a licensed realtor and owns 21 rental properties and Airbnbs. Jenna has been featured in national TV infomercials and is an HGTV DIY network personality. Most important, she's a mom and wife and a friend of mine. So welcome to the show, Jenna.
Thanks for having me. I had a part to add about your bathtub part. That was so informative. One of the things I always think about when I'm in the bathtub is I know that you can't have the ability to have a radiant heat type of system under it because it'd kind of cook you like a stove.
Yes.
But you would think that there would be, and maybe there is, some sort of a way to keep your water heated as you're in it.
So they have heated bathtubs. They're like $20,000. They're ridiculous. Okay. Yes, but they do have heated bathtubs.
Okay. Because I always think about that. I'm there has to be some way to have some sort of coils or something built in that it doesn't cook you. But it's, but it keeps you warm the whole time because, that's the fun part.
Yeah, I don't have that type of budget when I'm doing rehabs, but yes, they actually exist. I had a neighbor that was looking for one. I'm like, are you in there an hour or so? So anyway, welcome, Jenna. I'm so happy to have you on here. I've only been asking you for at least a year to be on the show. So thank you for finally being here. Give the audience a little background on you.
Well, thanks for having me. My background was actually not in real estate, surprising. My background was in the medical field. So I did medical sales for about 7 years and I did really well. So, some of my friends, they say, I drank from the golden chalice really young and, I enjoyed doing that, but I didn't wake up every day with that conviction when the alarm would go off, like, yes, this is what I get to do forever. I always loved real estate. I was the one, I'd watch the show and I'm like, let's go paint our kitchen cabinets today, or let's go do something. It was just always got me super excited. So I saw an ad one day on Pandora, I think it was. I was listening to music and I saw an ad for a real estate education company. And I'm like, oh, what the heck? Why not? Let's go do it. So I got into real estate. I think it was about 2013. And it's just been 0 to 60, to say the least, ever since then. At that time, I was a single mom. My daughter was 2. And so I just packed it up and I said, all right, no more medical sales stuff. Let's just do real estate from there. So I'm in southwestern Pennsylvania, the bottom left-hand corner of the state. I invest in some of the poorest counties in the state of Pennsylvania. So a lot of distressed properties, a lot of motivated sellers. And I got into flipping. I did a little bit of wholesaling. Then I taught real estate all across the country for a few years. And in 2017, we had an opportunity to start building our passive income. And I bought a block of rentals from a local landlord and just started adding to it since then. In the past year, I got into Airbnbs because, it's all the rage. Everybody's getting into those. And man, I look at the one I have now and I'm just like, I need 10 more of those.
Yes.
And so it's just so funny. Like just the transition from flipping houses to like, let's do Airbnbs. So.
Well, you really hit the ground running, went 0 to 60 so fast, because when I started, we both did the same educational program. You were actually in the infomercial that made me sign up for it. And so I had remembered seeing you and they were advertising, this single mom doing this and so successful. I'm like, you were so inspiring to me. And now actually I'm a coach for a different company, but it's so funny. I was just telling you right before this, I still use your website as like the example of where to go to like steal really good content, because you haven't changed it for years. And I'm like, oh, Jenna buys houses. Let's keep going back to that. So I really use that all the time. So thank you for that. And I don't think you know really the extent of how much you influence other people. And I truly reap the benefit of your experience and what you've gone through. And, I am truly grateful that I actually get to call you friend now. And I can't wait to get into this episode because we are going to talk about one of these, an older property, a historic property, and you're going to go through and give us all the numbers and fancy stuff about it. So give us a little background on this property.
Okay. It was spicy. It's a spicy property. So this property, it came across my desk probably 5 or 6 years ago, probably about 6 years ago. So we did the TV show for HGTV and DIY a few years ago, and we renovated this really historic house. It was from like 1860. And so, we filmed for like a whole month and we did, all this. It was a fantastic renovation. And then soon afterwards, I got contacted by this random seller. And he's like, hey, I saw your show. My mom was originally, lived in the area. She has a house for sale. We've been trying to sell it. I saw what you did on the last house, and this one would be another good project for you. He's like, would you be interested? So I looked it up and it was on the MLS. They tried selling it. It was like, they tried selling it for years. This, the house that I'm going to be, talking to you guys about. And so it was on the market. She was trying to sell it too high. It would, it would expire, get listed again, expire. And it was just like this house that was like, it reminded me of like Jurassic Park, like with all like the, weeds growing over it, like it looked like a jungle had just like overtaken it. It was abandoned. So it was a husband and wife that owned it. Their son was older than me. He was probably like 50. Or maybe in his 40s. So he was the one that was contacting me, and his parents lived in it. They bought it in the 80s. And they lived in it for a while. The dad had passed away. I think it was like in a car wreck. So the mom was like taking care of it herself. She couldn't handle it. So she moved to Virginia with the son. And then that's when he contacted me. And he's like, it's been sitting there vacant for like 10 years. It's an expense. They still had a mortgage on it. He's like, what do you think? And so I looked at, it was like, I think they originally had it listed for like, I don't know, like $130,000 or $140,000. Now where I am in Pennsylvania, like houses aren't, they don't go for like $1 million like they do in other places.
Right.
Like they don't. So pretty much like what they were listing it for was what it should sell for if it was renovated, but it was just a complete gut job. So I was like, no, there's no way I can buy it. The best that I can do is just try to help you as a friend. And so I became friends with him. And, I would, I had the lockbox code to it. So I would go and like check on it every couple months for him. And I'd tell him, hey, the roof's getting, extra worse. And hey, there's this going on. Like the one time, like the thermostats were, they weren't working. And so we went in and changed the thermostats for him as a friend. One time the basement was flooded. So we snaked the drains for him. Cause I just don't want to see one of these old historic houses just like go to crap. So so I just became friends with him, and he was like, I think they had it price dropped to like, I don't know, like 80,000 or something. And, I said to him the one day, I'm like, just think like, did you get any offers in the past? Maybe like an offensive offer, and like, maybe try go back to those people and see if they're interested. Because he's like, this one time, he's like, I got an offer of 80,000. He's like, we were so offended, I didn't even respond back. And he's like, you don't even know what I would do for an $80,000 offer. So they like price dropped it, and then they ended up getting an offer, and like I think they had it in the 60s. I think they ended up getting an offer, somewhere around there. As soon as they started doing the title search, it turned out the dad had sold like some sort of like stocks or some sort of like retirement or something, and he didn't pay the taxes on it. So there was like an $80,000 lien in the house in addition to the mortgage. So they're like, oh, heck with this, like we can't even sell the house now. So it just sat there and like was rotting. So he contacted me. I guess it turned out that lien would go away in 10 years. And so he contacted me at 10 years, like at the 10-year mark. And he's like, hey, good news. That property, it's finally able to be sold. So he's like, do you want to buy it? And I was like, well, it all depends on the price. Like I knew what my repair numbers were going to be. And I was like, it's not going to make sense to me. Like, I don't have to flip this house. You need to sell this house.
Right.
So he's like, the neighbor is interested in it. He made me an offer. If you can be where they're at, I want to sell it to you. You've helped me all these years. We're friends. And I was like, this isn't going to be like a bidding war where you're going to go to them, then come back to me and come back. And so he's like, all right. He's like, if you can be at this number, it's yours. And so we ended up moving forward on it. So do you want to know what I got it for?
What'd you get it for?
So originally, I think it was listed at like 130 or 140,000. I ended up getting it for 35,000.
Oh my goodness.
So like, this is like, you say you use my website to teach students. I used this house to teach students before I ever even bought it, before it was even an option, because I always would tell people like, this is an example of being consistent and following up with your sellers and keeping a record of the numbers that you're offering, that the offers that you have out to people, because people's level of motivation is sure to change when it's, 6 months, 12 months, 3 years, 5 years that it's sitting there stagnant on the market. So I ended up getting it for 35,000. We put it under contract, and it turned out that lien was 10 years and 6 months that it had to be on. Cause I think it was 10 years from the date that it was recorded or something. And then it was like, so it ended up being 10 years and 6 months. So then we had to wait additional months. I think we ended up buying, I think we were supposed to buy it in October, but then we couldn't buy it until like January. So the lien was going to go away. It was like January 8th or something. So we bought it at like 9 a.m., January 9th or something. So like, cause the IRS could re-lien the property.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah. So we were like super ninja about how we purchased it. So that's a little bit of the history. It's a gigantic house. It was one of the largest houses we ever did.
How big?
Well, in addition to the basement, it had 3 additional floors. It had 3 living rooms, 41 windows, 6 bedrooms. It had 2 complete huge HVAC systems. It was just huge. I've never had a house that big. So the cool thing about it is it was the original house in this particular section of our town. So it was like the first house that was built, and then all the land was theirs. And then they ended up, sectioning out the land, and then all the other houses were built, but it was like in one of the most prominent areas of my towns, but it was the first one. So it was built in 1902. So, 120 years old.
My gosh.
So,
wow.
And everything was like pretty much original. Like the windows were original. The wiring was original, it was just everything. So, I mean, it even had like really cool things. Like it had like a hole in the floor where they used to have like a thing you'd step down and summon like the servants. Cause I did like all the ancestry, checking on it. And they used to have servants in the house. So you'd step on this thing under the table and it would summon the servants to come down and, serve your food. And I mean, it was just so old school.
That is so cool. And I got to back up just a little bit because you were talking about taking good notes and really following up and being consistent. But real estate is relationships, really. And you went a step above, and no wonder you got this house. And I love that it worked out that way. So from the time you met him to the time that you ended up buying it, how many years was that?
Well, I remember, I think Addison, when I first looked at it, Addison was in kindergarten and she's in 6th grade now. So, I mean, she'll be in 7th grade. So, I mean, she was like, it was literally like 5 or 6 years the first time I saw it. And I mean, I'd walk in this house and I'm just like, oh my gosh, this house is just so fantastic. It was just so cool. I mean, the ceilings were like, I think they were like 10 or 12-foot ceilings. I mean, it had this huge porch on it. I mean, it had all the original hardwood floors that were, they had like the mahogany in it and, all interlaced in it, and, fireplaces and, pretty much every room and the bedrooms. And I mean, it was just breathtaking.
I love that. So at this point, I mean, everything's gone up in prices and everything. What do you think your ARV was at the time of purchase?
So, I mean, I have my numbers for you. So, I mean, because we have to analyze this when we purchase it. And so whenever I purchased it, my after repair value was actually $220,000. Because like I said, in my area, houses don't go that much. So that's like one of the downfalls of where I live is that, some people, you can get a house and, sell it for $500,000-$600,000 and you can make $200,000 profit on some of these houses. And so, mine, like I can't make a $200,000 profit spread on something like this just because it's going to sell for $220,000. Kind of a little fun fact about this property is as soon as we started renovating it, I did some marketing on it. I post pictures on my social media. I actually had a family that contacted me and they said, hey, we like this house. We want to buy it. So I had a buyer from the beginning, like before it was even demoed, before it was, down to the studs or anything like that. The unfortunate part was that this property was also in the heat of COVID. So, unfortunately, unemployment was paying better than I was to contractors and, with the cost of material. So when we talk about some of the numbers, things did change. But the good thing is that the price, the housing market went up. Yes. So, so we did have a buyer. We didn't end up meeting their time frame. We had a deadline of when we were going to sell it. Then obviously COVID happened. So then, material was, super delayed. Windows were delayed. I couldn't get lumber. I mean, it was, we ended up doing Trex decking because it was cheaper than lumber. I mean, that was like pathetic on all of our porches and stuff. But then they ended up backing out of the deal. And then we ended up getting another buyer and we had our new sales price reflect the new sales market. So it sucked at the time. It's one of those things where you're just like, oh my gosh, we lost our buyer. What are we going to do? But then it's like, we got a new buyer and we got a new sales price. So, so it is way better.
Yeah. We are definitely riding a very good wave right now. So, which, who knows where it's going to be going for the rest of this year, but, yes, definitely a good timing it ended up being. So, got your estimated ARV. What do you think your estimated, or what were your estimated repair costs? I know you do run numbers and do all that.
Yeah. So our numbers were like just shy of 100,000. We had said like 99,748 was what, my repair estimates were actually, because, and I broke it all down. So, the thing that was nice about it is the walls were all in really good condition. We had our plasterer come in and he was like, yeah, I can just do like, a real, easy skim coat on things. So when we did our wiring, we had to fish the lines through. We meticulously took off every single piece of woodwork. Cause I mean, it was like the high, like, I don't know, like 10-inch base that was like, on all of the wood, on all the walls, like all the door casing, it was all the original woodwork. So everything was taken off, everything was labeled. So we had to, fish wire through everything. And then our plasterer came in and he's like, no, he's like, I won't be able to do this. You're probably going to have to like reboard this whole house. And I was like, are you freaking kidding me? Yeah. So that was like, when we talk about numbers, like we did go over budget, a little bit, probably about like by around 20,000, because we had to, do some additional work when it came to our walls were concerned. The good thing is that, I had two brand new huge furnaces that were already recently installed before I had purchased it, which was another reason I was like really adamant about taking care of the thermostats in the furnace and all that stuff. But I mean, the roof was terrible. It had, there was a lot of renovations that were done to it. They were kind of like, anybody just kind of, they didn't have YouTube back then, but it looked like somebody, went on YouTube and, did some renovations, because, you'd find things were leaking and nobody, notified anybody about it. And they just didn't, so there was a lot of things that we kind of ran into.
So renovating these historic homes, these older homes, it just takes a special skill. And I love following you on social media, because there was one time you had I don't remember what it was, and you soaked it in something and were able to return was it doorknobs?
Yeah.
And it was these beautiful, very decorative doorknobs and vintage, and you soaked them in something and then were able to just totally restore them. But that just takes so much time, and it's really a special gift when you have that talent to do those things. I have on that property we're renovating next door, it was the old coal chute, like where they put the coal in for the furnace. And I was like, I can save that. I watched Jenna do this little video on it. Yeah, I can't do shit to it. So I'm still trying.
No, I'm just real particular. I mean, because you can't get those type of doorknobs.
You can't.
But like, I guess they're brass or whatever whatever material they are. And I mean, I'd watched so many different videos on it. And I mean, most contractors aren't going to care to do any of that kind of stuff. So, I mean, you just have to boil them in a crock pot. And like, that's the stuff I love to do. So I would just.
With water?
Yeah. So you just get it. I mean, you can never use that crock pot again, because it's most likely, a paint that, is not good to eat after, and so you just have to boil them and, for a good while, and then it just lifts right off. And then there's, I don't know if you have like, I think it's called like, bartender, or I forget what it is. It's like
barkeeper's friend. Barkeeper's friend. Yes.
Yeah. So you just sprinkle that on, and you could use like a real light, like steel wool, and, you just scrub it, and it shines like literally right up.
I love that. And I bet your buyers like so appreciate that you are so meticulous with these things. So thank you for sharing that. So how did you fund this deal?
So I had a private investor, a private lender on it.
And they do 100% of the purchase price and rehab?
Correct.
Very nice. Do you remember what your interest rate was?
Yeah, it's 12%.
Ooh, okay. Any points?
No.
Okay, good.
I don't think so. No, I don't think.
Yeah. And what was your projected timeline? I know COVID hit and just threw a clunker and everything, which ended up in the end working out, but what was your projected timeline?
So originally we had said 12 months, and even from the beginning, I had said, I want to do an 18-month timeline on this, just because it was such an invasive project. My lender didn't want to. So we'd said, all right, like we could probably do this in 12 months as long as, everything goes the way as projected. So my lender on this one, I'm hoping that she doesn't listen to your podcast, because honestly, after 9 years in real estate, it was one of the most difficult lenders that I ever worked with, ever. Not saying that, that you don't owe your lender, an explanation of what's going on in your projects. Like typically, my stuff is all over social media. So, I post pictures of everything. Like I had told my lender, hey, I'm more than happy to give you some different updates, but it was like on a multiple times a week, what's going on. I haven't got my pictures. What's like, I felt like I was an employee. So, at the 12-month mark, I definitely refinanced out that lender, and I got an additional, like a new lender who's a friend of mine to cover it for the last few months. So it ended up being about an 18-month project, which is what I had originally had requested when she didn't want to do that. But I mean, to me, it's like, if you want to get an additional 6 months of interest at 12%,
right?
I don't know what the fight was about, but I mean, she got everything paid back to her, and everything was completed, on her end. And so I was very excited to get a new lender on that one.
And normally it's so easy to work with private money lenders, because it's not the bank. It's not, having to pay monthly. It's typically a balloon payment at the very end once you sell it. And bless my lenders, because COVID, prices have gone up. It has been tough getting through some of these projects. I'm so grateful for my lenders. And you're exactly right. They're getting more months of just, building on that interest that they put in there. So to all my lenders listening, I love you. Thank you.
Yeah.
But yes, that can be tough. I've had some tough ones in the past.
Yeah.
All right. So now you're getting towards the end. I want to start getting to our final numbers here. And don't give it away just yet. But did you ever list it, or you just went with that second buyer?
Yeah, I never even had to list it.
Oh,
So we ended up going with the second buyer.
That is wonderful. So we're going to jump to these numbers here. So your estimated repairs were, you said 700 something.
Yeah. A little under like 100,000.
And what were your actual repairs?
We were around 120,000.
Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah. But I mean, it's still, I don't like going, usually like knock on wood, we can be under budget if we're anything, just because we have so much material and inventory from one house to the next. So, we'll be like, oh, we already have a bathtub. We already have, a double bowl sink. We already have this, from, times where maybe we bought something wrong or something that ended up not fitting correctly. So we have we call it like Home Depot. Like, it's like our office that had everything. It's like you just go to it. It's like a Home Depot. So we had a lot of stuff in inventory. Plus we were using a lot of the wood casing already. We already had the trim. We already had a lot of the stuff. So, but
what about windows? So we bought a quad in a really cool part of downtown Raleigh, and it's deemed historic. So we can't replace the windows. We actually had to repair all the windows. And I think there were 42 windows on this property. So did you replace them completely, or? Okay.
Yeah, we replaced them. So we took them out, and I mean, they had all of the brass handles on them, where you lift them up, and we ended up just getting rid of all of them and putting all new windows in. But that was, a challenge. So luckily it was I had them all ordered a week before, and they were delivered a week before all the window factories shut down. So it was perfect timing.
I am very jealous. It took us 5.5 months to get the windows next door. Ugh, painful.
Yeah.
All right. So commissions, closing costs. Do you remember
Yeah.
Okay.
So we didn't have any commissions since we didn't have it listed.
Very good.
So my interest, that was a pricey thing. It was around 25,000 with the combination of both lenders. My holding costs were a little over 13,000, with, the insurance, the taxes, the utilities. And whenever I sold it, my closing costs were a little over 5. So those were my numbers. You want to know what it sold for?
Well, the first buyer, what did they have it under contract? Well, what did they first offer, the first buyers?
I had it under contract with them for 220,000, which was my exact ARV.
Perfect. And then what did you end up selling it for?
284,000.
Very nice. Excellent. And what was your total profit?
It was around a little over 85,000 on it.
Wonderful. Well, great job, Jenna. I love that. I love all the historical, everything that you do and you said it was built in 1902.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah.
then, by the way, this house, you had a picture of you and Adam standing somewhere. Is this the same house?
Yeah.
And then you had a picture of the couple who lived there prior. I guess the husband passed away in the car accident, but
no, this is actually the original people.
The original people.
Yeah. So it was super cool. So originally it was built by, this very prominent man and his wife. They ended up not having children. And this was back, over 120 years ago in town. He ended up passing away. And the thing that was creepy about this house, this was back in the day when they had funerals in the house. So I know of 3 funerals, 3 deaths that were actually in the house, which is creepy. So the woman that was, the widow, she had, a niece and nephew that she pretty much raised. So the nephew, his name was Reed. And so he grew up there. She raised him because his mother had passed away, which was the woman's sister. So
wow.
when he was younger, so he was pretty much raised there. And then when he got older, he ended up buying it from her estate. So he lived there in total for over 80 years of his life. They raised their children there. And so his son, Reed Jr., who's in his 80s now, I think he's like 89.
Oh my goodness.
I found him, I contacted him, and he was like a fantastic friend through the whole project. He lives out in California. So he sent me all these pictures of his parents. And so there was a picture of them sitting out in the yard. And so Adam and I took a picture in the same exact spot and kind of recreated the photo. So it was in the same family's hands for over, 80 years. Then it was sold to one family for a couple years, and then the people that I bought it from. So they're really, yeah. So it was like, I knew every single person, like the people that had it for a couple years. She came and looked at the property. She gave me a ton of photos of it. Like the whole neighborhood was just like so fantastic, like giving me all these original pictures of it. So it was great to be able to bring it back to the way that it originally was.
And I'm sure people in that neighborhood, your buyers, all of them appreciate all this. You put your heart and soul into this. And I'm sure they love every aspect of it. I super love that photo of the reenactment because you guys just stood in the same spot. And I was like, that is so cute. I just love them.
When we did demo, we actually found like these like really scandalous love letters. And so like, I mean, they were like real, like it was like, my parents won't be home at this time. Come on over. And so I contacted like, the guy that I said from California. I was like, do you have any idea? He's like, oh my gosh, those were there was a neighbor girl that used to have a crush on me. He hid them in the wall. And we found them and I mailed them to him, and him and his wife were cracking up. I mean, there was all these old love letters from when he was like 14 years old from the neighbor girl.
That is hilarious. I love that.
Yeah.
So after completing this project, what were your major takeaways from this?
Oh, I don't know. I would say my takeaways were not to get into projects that were that invasive during COVID time. But I mean, obviously you can't predict that. These were like my favorite projects in the beginning. Like I love the historic ones. I also regrettably did a lot of like duplexes to single family, which now that I have rentals, I'm like, I wish I would have had them all as duplexes right now. I'd knock out all the center walls and I do these huge projects. And then we kind of transitioned into like the easy cosmetic split levels from the 80s. And this was kind of like our first real, getting back into these old historic ones. So as we did that, I'm just like, there's just so many unforeseens that can come up, with like the walls and the electric and, all this different stuff. So like my big takeaway is just, really plan the time out. I hated having to rush on things like, the woodwork or the brass handles and things like that. So, I mean, I'd say my takeaway is just being, more organized with it and really giving it the time. Because I think if I'm, when I flip houses, I like the easy cosmetic quick ones. And if I do these, I want them to be more of a fun project, not more, not having to be rushed and, all that stuff.
So speaking of fun projects, didn't you buy like a funeral parlor?
We were going to, but we backed out of that one.
Oh my gosh.
That one was creepy. I mean, it looked like the people just like walked out one day. I mean, cause they still
didn't.
Yeah. Yeah. They're probably still there. I mean, they still had like the chairs set up in like the parlor rooms. Like you go down in the basement, they still had the tables there, like the tubing. I mean, it was just like you'd walk into the office and they still had like the books wide open with their accounting and the keys laying around. I'm like, where did these people go? I mean, it was just
goodness.
But it would have been, no.
What would you have even done with that?
I don't know. That's like another thing. Like it'd have been a really cool Airbnb.
I was just going to say Airbnb.
Yeah. But I think this project steered me away from that project. So I think that it kind of like really set my tolerance to a different level of what I want to tackle or not.
Gotcha. Well, I appreciate you sharing this project. It is so fun to follow you on Facebook and on Instagram. So I hope people, are you on Instagram? I think I follow you on Instagram. Okay. I know I follow you on Facebook. So guys, if you're listening, you want to find Jenna Hoover. She is so awesome to follow. So the second half of the podcast is what makes Jenna Hoover a badass, which clearly you are. So I use the acronym BADASS. And the first one is B for book. What is a book that's made a huge difference in your life?
So this one was actually when you were asking me, you tell me a little bit about what your podcast consists of, you had mentioned about a book. And I was like, I could give like the typical, like the real estate books and all the different things. But a book that kept coming to my mind was one that probably most people wouldn't even think about as a book that changed somebody or that you'd recommend. It's called A Child Called It.
Oh, yes.
Have you heard of that one?
I have.
Yeah. And it's by Dave Pelzer. And I think it's like Pelzer. And I read it, before, and it made me make a mental note. I want to reread it again, but it has nothing to do with real estate. But I think it's one of those books that, like, I think we all look through our own lives with a certain lens, and like this project, for example, I'm like, this is the worst. This is, like when something would go wrong or contractors wouldn't show up, like, this is the worst that it could be. Or, I'd always say, like, this is the house that's either going to make us or break us. And then you read a book like that where this child is so abused that they're not even addressed by a name.
Right.
They're starved, they're stabbed, they're beaten. The mother was an alcoholic and did all these terrible things to this person. And you think, like, man, I'm sitting here complaining and there's this kind of stuff that happens in the world. And so, something that made a huge difference in my life is that book, just because it opened my eyes, because, kind of something that you may not know, obviously, since, we don't, talk on an every single day basis, but I was extremely sheltered growing up. I went to 13 years of private school, private Catholic school. We didn't have a computer. We didn't really have internet. Wow. I didn't really go on computers until I was in college. Then I went to a really small medical-based college. And then soon after that, I was married. So, I mean, I really was not exposed to the world. And so, just kind of reading a book like that is just like, was so eye-opening to me, just because I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I didn't even know this kind of stuff exists or it happened.
Yeah.
So that's a really good book that kind of changed me.
I have not read it. I have seen it. So I'm definitely gonna have to give it a chance now. So, all right. The first A in badass is advice. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
This was a tough one for me, because I feel like I've gotten different bits of advice, and I can, state who gave it to me. But I think kind of the best bit of advice is something that was more of like a self-analysis that I kind of came about within the last year, just from my own intuition and just learning. And it sounds like really simple, but not everybody is like me. And what I mean by that is, I feel like I always gave everybody the benefit of the doubt. And I assumed that everybody was a version of me. Like, so if I wouldn't do it, they wouldn't do it. If I wouldn't say it, they wouldn't say it. If I wouldn't steal, cheat, or lie, that they wouldn't steal, cheat, or lie. And so I feel like the biggest aha moment for me was like in the past year, when I just like suddenly realized, like, oh my gosh, like, I've been giving everybody this benefit of the doubt in my life. And a lot of people don't deserve it, obviously. But I feel like it was just like this moment where I was just like, everybody is not like me. And I needed to stop looking through that lens, because, just for example, when my first buyers backed out of this, I was just like so blindsided, because it like they hadn't even mentioned that, like, because they ended up finding another house is what it was.
Right.
And so it was like, we had an agreement that they put 10% down on it, they couldn't get it back. It was non-refundable. And all of a sudden I get this attorney letter saying that they wanted their money back and they were backing out of the deal. And I'm like, man, like, why didn't they just call me? Why didn't they just say, hey, we need to sit and talk? Hey, can I have my money back? Like, I gave their money back. I didn't have to. But, I kind of feel like for people to just instantly go to these super extremes, or, I'm sure like you've had situations in real estate where somebody does something and I'm just like sitting there with my jaw on the floor. I'm like, I never even could have thought of that, let alone doing it. So, my best, like, so to me, I feel like I hit a certain maturity level where I was just like, okay, like, I feel like I grew up, like my eyes finally opened to the world, because again, it was from being extremely sheltered. Like, I had no idea the capacity that some people could have in this world. So it's just to view people differently.
And hearing you tell the story, the impression I had of you when I first just had idolized you, and you were such an inspiration to me, is that you were a single mom. You were going through this and you were going to make this happen. There was no turning back for you. And you had so many people rooting for you that I don't even think you realized, like, across this country, who would see that infomercial or see what you were doing and the story that you were told. And like, it just makes me love you even more, saying, oh, just this past year, I thought, well, not everybody's like me. And I'm like, Girl, you are amazing. And it warms my heart, just your authenticity. And I love hearing you say that. So you are a huge inspiration to so many for what you've gone through. And by the way, you married one of your students. Is that true?
Hot for teacher. And he was actually the first real estate student. I always say like results, not typical. He was the first student that I ever coached. So it's funny.
That is awesome. I love that. And then you guys have a adorable son. So,
yep.
You guys,
he's so cute.
And
he's 4.
It's tough being married to your business partner, isn't it?
Oh yeah. Cause you just want to punch him in the face sometimes, you know what I mean? And then like when you're so annoyed at work and then you come home and you're like, oh, I got to deal with you here,
That's so true.
But I think it's great though. I think it's like a different understanding whenever you're with somebody that is committed to something as you are. And, there's certain things that you have to do when it comes to work, and it's just understood. And, we're a great support team. Like I always said, it's going to take a super confident man to be able to be with me, because that was the demise of my second marriage. I got into real estate right after I'd gotten married. I was married for like maybe 3 or 4 months, and he was a super great guy. He's still in our lives. He's Addison's stepdad. I mean, he doesn't have his own children, and he's still very much involved in her life. But it was just very difficult for him to be able to see me go travel and see me do these different things. And I was young, and, and I should have done a better job assuring him. But the more that he would, question and things like that, the more it would push me away. And so, we just basically agreed to disagree, and we're better friends than anything. So I always say, Adam had to be extremely confident, and he had to take different roles, different times of a stay-at-home mom type of a role, a stay-at-home dad while I'm traveling and doing different things. And then, when he does his stuff, then I have to assume that role. So it's kind of like the unwritten rules of being in business and in a relationship with somebody.
And speaking of traveling, you just shared the stage with some total badasses. And it was this huge event in, where was it? Vegas. And you got to share the stage with some of my heroes. So tell us who you shared the stage with.
So people like Robert Kiyosaki.
Oh, just Robert Kiyosaki, good, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Yes. Who else was on there?
Dean Graziosi, Ed Milet, Chris Crone, Dan Fleischman, Cody Sperber, all these different people. Pace Morby, he's one of my good friends.
I love me some Pace.
Hatter. Yep. Yeah. So, there's some really phenomenal people that were there.
Sometimes you just got to take a second and look back and see how far you've come, because I'm so impressed with you, so proud to call you friend. So, all right, that leads into the next one. And the D in badass is drive. What drives you to be successful?
Definitely my kids and my legacy. And I guess this can go back into the advice category, since I didn't really credit anybody for that other than myself. But one of my mentors told me in the beginning, they said, it's either your kids are going to respect you or resent you when you die. So, I don't want them to resent me. I don't want anything, I grew up in like an extremely blue collar area. Like I said, a really, low income type of area in Pennsylvania. My parents were both in the medical field. That's why I got into the medical field. I grew up with the understanding you grow up, you work, you retire, you die, then rinse and repeat, kind of that thing. So, I'm breaking all the molds with having my own business, doing this, type of stuff, working for myself, not having a traditional job. So, I didn't want to be the type of parent that you work your whole life and then you get a couple years once you retire and maybe you have a little bit saved, you leave your kids. Like I want to be able to leave a block of rentals to this child and leave a block to this child. And they can, if they, whatever career they want to have, they have all the passive income they could have to really pursue. If they want to be a singer, you go freaking sing and then you don't have to worry about money. You want to be an artist, go be an artist. You want, I want them to do whatever they want to do.
That is fantastic. All right. The second A in badass is aspiration. I'm a big goal setter. So what is a goal you are currently working on?
So whenever we bought all of our rental properties, we bought them all with private lenders. Some of them we had like really good, percentage rates that were, kind of comparable to what banks are and stuff. Some of them were not. And so our goal this year is we're taking all of them and we're doing bank refinancing on all of them. Also, our goal is to get some more Airbnbs and more rentals. So I want to get at least, we're actually buying a triplex coming up and then another duplex. So I want to get about 5 more rentals within the next year. And then I want to significantly increase my Airbnbs. I kind of lucked into my Airbnb, and I'm just like, man, I want a whole bunch more. And it's like a modular house, and it's up in the mountains where there's skiing, and there's a trailer park that's available that I could potentially buy. And I'm just like, when I was at the, that Vegas event, somebody was like, hey, if you get into those, I'll fund it for you. So I'm like, all right.
Nice.
So yeah, so I could potentially buy, a whole bunch of Airbnbs coming up.
They are addictive. I love me some Airbnbs. I love the profits that come along with Airbnbs. I think they are fantastic. All right. The first S in badass is systems. What systems do you have in place to help you achieve success?
Well, you'd mentioned goals. And so I'm a really, really big goal setter. I also like to call goals like my dreams, like setting dreams and like dream casting and stuff like that. So obviously we have business systems in place. We can go over all those different things, but like my main thing is like just to be the visionary of our business, because if you don't know where you're going, people aren't going to know how to follow you or know why to follow you. So I'm really, really big on goals and then periodic reviews of those goals. And so, it's like, okay, if we're here, I want to be able to, test and track all those different goals, see like what I have to do. Cause, somebody can say, oh, I want to do this, or I want to be that. Well, what does that mean? How do we do it? Like, you want to read 12 books a year. What does that mean? It's 1 book a month, 3 books a quarter, reading for 15 minutes a day. Like, I want to look at it like that, tangible, like those small bite-sized pieces. And I'm also really, really big on like self accountability. There's a lot of people that they say, I don't know if it's just my drive or the way I was brought up or just from being sheltered and not really being around certain negativity. But like, if I say I'm going to do something, like my accountability is super strong, and especially with myself. So, like my own, like just accountability with my own self. So, just if I say I'm going to do it, then it's a non-negotiable, like it just has to be done. And then, my mindset is something that really is almost like a system for me, because, I have really, really good intuition, but, I feel like staying positive and having that positive mindset, like, they say, if you can dream it, you can do it, or if you, whatever, like, those like things are. So like, if I say I'm doing it, then I know that I'm going to accomplish it. I just have to figure out, the steps to be able to make it happen. And, self-motivation. Like I never really had people to motivate me. I don't like, leading with my misery story of like how I became a single mom and went through this and did all that stuff. It's part of my journey, but it's not who I am necessarily. It helps shape me. But because of that, like there's a lot of things in my life, I didn't have a choice. Like I had to do certain things. Like when I looked at, when I purchased, when I got into the real estate education company, back then it was like $25K. It was 6 months of training. I looked at it. I said 6 months, that's 24 weeks, 25,000. Every week I sit here, I'm taking a little over $1,000 away from my daughter. So I have to move.
Right.
And so like, that's the way that I just looked at everything. It was like, I have to go, I have to do these things. And it was just go, go, go. So like the systems it's a non-negotiable. If I say I'm doing it, then it has to be done, and it will be done.
Fantastic. And chunking down, that's so great to look at. My husband and I, we have our, annual goals. Well, we have, 5-year goals and then our annual goals. And then we break them down to monthly goals. And then we meet weekly, like clockwork every Sunday at 5. And we sit down together and, what have we done to get to that goal? And some definitely get, start lagging behind, because then there's like these other shiny keys over here. Like, oh, we got, we could buy a quad to make it an Airbnb. Let's go for that. So, it is so important though to do that and have that accountability. So thank you for sharing that. All right. The final S in badass is success. What does success mean to Jenna Hoover?
And it's probably not something that most people would expect. But my definition of success is to be a stay-at-home mom with a full-time job. Yeah. So my goal is to, I say like stay-at-home mom with a full-time job, because, my goal is to be able to be at home every single day. I mean, I pretty much am with what I do, but that's an ultimate goal. Like I always wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. That was what I wanted to do. But I also wanted to have the type of full-time job that I'm able to still bring in an income, because, I had a really good job in medical sales where I made 6 figures a year. And so then I gave all that up to be a mom. And then soon after, things happened in my marriage. And then I was, no job, no money, no house, nothing. And I had to figure out how to take care of my daughter. So then it was like, okay, what do I do? So I got into real estate, and, I was obviously able to take care of myself, but my goal was always to just have that time to be with my kids all the time and to do all those different things. And so, I think that the reason that I say the stay-at-home mom stuff is because I enjoy what I do, but I also don't want work to be my number one priority or the number one thing that's on my mind or the thing that I focus on. So, with our rentals, we have, 21 rental properties, they're typically always at full occupancy. So they're really not a job to me. My Airbnb, we have somebody that cleans it. We have, the software that runs it, and it is where it is. So that's not a full-time job for me. So to be as passive and do as much as I can to bring in the income, but to be at home all the time so that way I'm able to really be with them. Like I enjoy traveling. I enjoy doing all those things, but where I'm the happiest is when I'm mom in a robe, so that's just what I always wanted to do. So, I mean, I have that freedom that is like that to me defines success, is to be able to have the income coming in that I don't have to worry about working, that all I have to worry about is what am I making for dinner and what room am I cleaning and organizing today? And I had a cleaning lady, I had somebody that was cleaning my house every 2 weeks, but I'm like, I want to be the one that cleans my own house just because I want to say that I'm doing it, because for a long time, like I was teaching every single weekend for, it would be like 8. If I look at 8 weekends, I was gone like 6 or 7 of them out of 8. And I was like having to travel across the country and teach all the time. And I'm like, I took for granted just being able to be home and doing laundry. I just want to be able to relax and just do whatever. And so I really missed that. And, luckily my daughter got to go with me all the time, but I just wanted more of a normal type of life. So,
well, I have no doubt that your kids are going to respect you and not resent you for that piece of advice that you heard years ago. And you have been such a great guest on the show. I hope to have you back another time to talk about another project or anything else, but you are fantastic. And Jenna, I truly appreciate it. How do people find you on social media or what? Well, I already said Jenna buys houses, but how do people find you?
That's literally pretty much on every social media site is just at Jenna buys, plural, houses, plural. They can find me there. And one of your questions, you said, what makes you a badass? And I made a little note here. Do we have like a second that I can share one little bit? I actually had a speech prepared for that event I was just at, and then they changed my topic. And I was really bummed because I really felt like it was really important, like something I wanted to share with people. I feel like probably the last year, there's been like 2 really important words that have just come across my desk, come across my mind so much. And the first one is tenacity, which is, obviously not quitting. Right. And that's something that's so important. And also courage, because courage is different from confidence, because obviously, confidence is going to be your belief in yourself, but courage is to be able to do things that scare the crap out of you. And I feel like when you're in real estate or in any business, you have to have the ability to be tenacious, not quitting, like no matter what, like no matter how scary it is, no matter how much it hurts. Because, the thing is with our bodies is that our bodies like comfort and they like what's easy. But the thing is, there's no growth in our comfort zone.
That is true.
So I look at, my journey in real estate or my journey in everything. And I think about like the courage that you have to do things to face fear, like to face it head on and walk towards it actually. And because that's where you'll get, like, those are the days where you become an investor. Like there were so many days where I'm like, man, I want to quit. This sucks. This person screwed me over. This investor lied to me. This contractor stole from me. This project manager did this, or whatever the situation is. But it was like the courage to face it and resolve it and being tenacious enough not to quit. on so many different times. And so I like for, your listeners that are listening is like, to know that anything is possible. Like if we know somebody that has done it, it proves to us that it's possible.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, if we know that it's possible, it is possible for us. And it's just like walking. I mean, walking was super scary probably at first. How many times we smashed our faces off coffee tables, skinned up our nose, but we got up and we kept doing it because we saw somebody else do it before us. And if we didn't, we would just be sitting there like laying in a little baby basket, whining our whole life, which is the majority of, not the majority, but the bulk of a lot of people sitting there whining and complaining about all the things that are wrong in their life. And that's the thing that separates you and separates, me from a lot of other people, is that we don't sit and whine. We get up and we face it and we do it and we don't quit along the way. And then that's when you're going to have the results that you're going to want. And that's, when we talk about goals and being accountable, is that, you're going to be able to accomplish anything you want as long as you say, I'm going to do it and I'm not going to quit no matter how much it sucks, because we know how good it can be.
And anyone can do this business. I mean, you and I have met so many people in this industry, and it's only because they had tenacity and courage. And they weren't the sharpest tool in the shed, shall we say, but anyone can do that. So if I have ever heard a badassery bestowment, that was a great badassery bestowment. So thank you, Miss Badass Jenna Hoover. I appreciate you so much being on the show. And that is all. Thank you for listening, and we will catch you on the next episode. Now go out there and share your badassery. And don't forget, make it a great day. Take care. Bye-bye. Whoop, whoop.
Thank you for listening to RAIN, the Real Estate Investor Growth Network. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. If you need more badassery, you can follow Jen Josie by visiting therealjenjosie.com or become a member of RAIN by registering on rainmastermind.com.